A man sanctioned by China just said the U.S. must cooperate with Beijing. Marco Rubio, Washington's most hardline anti-China hawk, suddenly talks about constructive relations with China. At the same time, Japan is panicking. Taiwan looks uneasy. And rumors of secret talks between President Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump are everywhere. Is Washington quietly changing course on Taiwan? Or is America considering the option of selling Taiwan at a good price? Because when the strongest country in the world starts choosing words carefully, history is about to move. Hi everyone, welcome back to Difference Frames the World, a channel to analyze world affairs from a different angle. Today we discuss the rumor of a secret talk between Beijing and Washington about the peaceful reunification of Taiwan with the Chinese mainland. Over the past year, the relationship between China and the United States has gone through changes so dramatic that they've shocked global public opinion. Every few weeks, it feels like another political bomb goes off, triggering confusion, speculation, and chaos across international media. And this time, the detonator was none other than our old friend, the current U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. In a video uploaded several days ago, titled, "Here is Why Washington Refused to Side with Tokyo Over Taiwan," we discussed his year-end briefing. Today, we want to dive deeper into his remarks.
Find opportunities to work together, because I think if there's a global challenge that China and the U.S. can work together on.
First, please tell us what your impression of Rubio is. If you've followed international politics long enough, your first thought is, oh, I see. Rubio is the hawk among hawks, and he is probably still on China's sanction list. For years, whenever anything related to China came up in Congress, Rubio was almost guaranteed to support it as long as the motion was against China. And yet, on December 19, 2025, at a year-end press conference in Washington, Rubio suddenly said something that stunned almost everyone. He was no longer anti-China as he had been. He said that although China and the United States have differences, the United States must maintain contact with the world's second-largest economy. He went even further. He said the U.S. firmly believes it can maintain its alliance with Japan, while at the same time constructively cooperating with China. It was rare for Rubio and the Trump administration to say that, especially after the U.S. and China experienced so many hiccups in the past months, when Trump imposed hefty tariffs on Chinese goods. Let that sink in for a moment. We haven't heard the words constructive cooperation between China and the U.S. for a very long time. He even added, with a naive face, that he believes he has always been friendly toward China. He looks so lovely when telling lies. It's like a beautiful fox telling us that it is not interested in our chicken, if the fox can speak English. A politician who built his career for over a decade on being anti-China suddenly says he's friendly toward China and wants to cooperate with the country which is still sanctioning him. We would like to know if Beijing will lift the sanctions on him so that he can go to China with Trump in April 2026. If China does not allow him to accompany Trump to China at that time, it will be a political joke for the United States. So what's going on here? Is he wooing China? Is that just diplomatic language out of thin air? Or does it signal something much bigger, a fundamental shift in Washington's direction at the end of 2025, the first year of Donald Trump's second term? And as people were still trying to process that, even more unsettling rumors began circulating in international media circles. No one other than the US and Chinese officials involved can tell whether they're true or false, but the rumor seems reasonable when we look into the actual situation in the United States. The claim is this: China and the United States are engaged in secret, high-level contacts. And the core issue being discussed isn't trade, tariffs, or technology. It's Taiwan. Specifically, how to support peaceful reunification across the Taiwan Strait, under certain conditions, possibly within some broader framework agreement. Call it what you want, a deal, an understanding, or a strategic bargain. The point is, controversial signals are everywhere right now. So in today's episode, we're going to step back and connect the dots, not just from recent headlines, but from patterns that stretch back decades. And let me be clear about one thing. It has nothing to do with kindness or friendship. International politics is not a family gathering. Everyone is a rational actor. Interests come first. What are we trying to figure out today? 3 key questions. First, why did Secretary of State Rubio suddenly soften his tone? Second, why do the Taiwan authorities, long seen as backed by Japan and the US, suddenly look so uneasy? And third, the most important question of all. Are cross-strait relations approaching a historic turning point? To understand Rubio's statement, we can't just listen to what he said. We have to ask, who heard it and how did they feel? And the most uncomfortable, most anxious place in the world right now isn't Taipei. It's Tokyo. Let's rewind a few days. Right as Rubio was talking about cooperating with China, what was happening in Japan? Japanese leaders were openly calling for urgent meetings with Washington. Some voices in Japan's political establishment were even floating the idea of nuclear weapons, something that would have been unthinkable years ago. At the same time, tensions between China and Japan were spiking. Earlier this month, Chinese military aircraft conducted operations near the Ryukyu Islands. Japanese fighter jets reported radar lock-ons, a situation that, in military terms, is dangerously close to actual combat. Japan reacted immediately, emergency press conferences at midnight. Strong protests. Harsh rhetoric. The Japanese government took a very tough tone, portraying China as a direct security threat. So now imagine how Tokyo felt hearing Rubio talk about dynamic balance in the region. What is the so-called dynamic balance in East Asia? It means China and Japan are not happy with each other, and it is a normal thing, a historical thing, nothing that the US can interfere with. In one sentence, it is none of America's business. Rubio did not mention the ironclad alliance with Japan, nor did he say the US will stand firmly with Japan. Instead, he said balance, implying that the US is not interested in the quarrel or fight between Beijing and Tokyo. To Japan, that sounds like a warning bell. It sounds like, don't expect the US to back you in every confrontation automatically. And when reporters asked the White House whether it was worried about escalating Sino-Japanese tensions, the answer was basically, the president believes good China-US relations are beneficial. In other words, Japan, do what you want but don't drag us into it. If you want to play with fire, play with it on your own. In diplomacy, it is called strategic indifference. The US downplays Japan's rhetoric to avoid escalation or to wait for a better moment to act. And the better moment might be next April when Trump visits Beijing. For Japan, this feeling is terrifying because it brings back memories of a nightmare from half a century ago, when Nixon shook hands with China's chairman Mao to counterbalance the former Soviet Union without notifying Japan. And now, in late 2025, that same fear is creeping back. Rubio's message, stripped of polite language, sounds like this. The US may be preparing a bigger deal with China, and Japan shouldn't get in the way. We believe Rubio did not tell Sanai Takaichi before the press conference what he would say, as it was none of her business, and she had no right to meddle with America's freedom of speech. Why is the US suddenly so cold toward a longtime ally? Is it conscience? Or is Rubio suddenly making friends with China? Of course not. Rubio is a friend of nobody, except for America's core interests. There's no friendship in geopolitics. It is especially true between the US and China, two rivals competing globally. And that brings us to the second core reason behind this shift, America's 2027 military anxiety, as some analysts put it. Diplomacy doesn't exist in a vacuum. There is no such thing as diplomacy for a weak nation like Venezuela when harassed by the United States. China is not Venezuela, it is 100 times stronger. Beijing is more confident than any other country on earth when dealing with the Americans. Its confidence at the negotiating table comes from military strength. We will discuss Washington's view of China's military strength in another video soon. Rubio didn't change his tone because he changed his personality. He is still a hawk, not a dove, but China is no longer a cock, it is now a waking lion. China is not the China in 1996, not the China in 1999, but a superpower equal to the United States, and on many fronts, it even outnumbers the US. Rubio changed because the numbers changed. In recent months, a series of internal US military assessments painted a troubling picture. You've probably heard they frequently say 2027. Senior US military leaders believe China aims to complete major military modernization by the year to mark the 100th anniversary of the Chinese army, with the capability to resolve the Taiwan issue, in peace or by force. In response, the US military set its own goal, to have its War Department ready for war before 2027. It turned out to be the biggest military and political joke in late 2025. The US Navy has 11 aircraft carriers on paper. But how many can the US actually deploy to the Western Pacific right now? Some are under major repair. Some face delivery delays. Others are nearing retirement. Most of the US destroyers and cruisers are rusty, ready to be scrapped. At the same time, the US is stretched everywhere, like an octopus, from Europe to the Middle East, busying itself with Ukraine, Israel, the Red Sea, and even Latin America. After years of supplying Ukraine and Israel, the US precision-guided munition stockpiles are dangerously low. Replenishing them could take 3 to 5 years. The year 2027 is just 370 days away from them. How can the US military compete with the Chinese army in the West Pacific, then? The Chinese are building ships at a pace often described as dumping dumplings into the water. When Rubio looks at these reports, what options does he have? He can't bluff forever. If a crisis erupts in the Taiwan Strait in late 2025 or early 2026, either triggered by Taiwan separatists or Japanese militarists, the US risks losing its global dominance badly. The military balance in East Asia has quietly crossed a tipping point. Not through war but through sheer capability. Beijing may win without firing a single bullet. It does not have to. And this brings us back to the rumors of secret talks about Taiwan.
During the past months, US President Donald Trump has repeatedly said he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize and he'd like to have it. He even said that it would be an insult to the United States if he doesn't get it.
Donald Trump did not win the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. He lost to an opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado, a Venezuelan democracy activist. As a wholehearted comrade to make China great again, will he help unite Taiwan with the Chinese mainland in 2026? Sounds crazy, like a drama, right? But it is not without reason. Historically, when the US feels overstretched, Taiwan becomes a bargaining chip with Beijing. In the 1970s, the US sacrificed Taiwan's diplomatic status to please Chairman Mao so that it could counter the Soviet Union alongside China. Every major US policy shift toward China follows the same pattern. Whenever the US needs Beijing's help to solve its internal problems, Taiwan becomes a bargaining chip. And now, in 2025, Taiwan is back on sale. The inflation in the US is improving, but is still high, and the US debt is exploding, heading to $40 trillion. The US military is overstretched and cannot deal with Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia at the same time. So when Rubio says he wants cooperation with China, it's not emotional, but realistic and pragmatic. Whether Beijing's reunification with Taiwan happens soon or not, peaceful or not, one thing is clear. The strategic environment has changed. The US can stop it for a while, not forever. Moreover, Taiwan's value to the US is diminishing. China can not only make 5-nanometer class chips without EUV machines, but it will also have its own EUV machines shortly to produce high-end semiconductors more efficiently and effectively. What is the value of TSMC to the United States? China is getting too strong for the United States to treat it as an enemy anymore. Will the rumor come true that the US will talk with Beijing to promote the reunification? We don't know, but we are sure about one thing. That is, China will become a unified country, and Taiwan will not be strayed forever.